Well, hi, it's Chris with Implied Music. I'm a keyboard player, and that includes piano, of course, but I love a good tone wheel organ, the Hammond B3, or other Hammonds that use the same technology. These days, we almost always use clones, which sort of replicate the effect. My clone here is the Mojo 61, and it's kind of like a half-size version. But we're going to take a look at the B3 in Logic, talk about what drawbars do, talk about the Leslie speaker, percussion, how the mechanics of the original instrument worked. I love a good B3. Let's take a look. Okay, that was fun and a little embarrassing, but I'm back. I'm Chris from Implied Music, and as a keyboard player for rock bands and pop bands, I've frequently been called on to cover all kinds of parts. I'm a pianist, but we play tons of keys. One of the classic keyboards is the Hammond organ B3 or C3 or M1 or M2. They all work on the same principle, the tone wheel principle. And if I can find a couple of pictures, I'll show you. But basically, the tone wheel works like this. Each disc has teeth, and there are tiny little electromagnetic pickups along the edges. As the teeth pass the pickup, that's what makes the vibration, the frequency of the disc. Crazy, right? Oh my God. Tiny electrical signal out to the amplifier, etc. That's the principle. My gosh. Who thought of that? Well, we know who thought of it. And in fact, the Hammond organ is basically an emulation of old-fashioned pipe organs. And they've retained a bunch of the conventions of pipe organs. Let's take a look at the vintage B3 here in Logic. Vintage pipe organs had tubes of different lengths that air was blown through. Well, those different lengths were measured in feet, and so we've kept that basic principle. The drawbars on an organ correspond to basic octaves. I've pulled out all the way the 8-foot drawbar, and I'm playing a D. As I push it in, it kind of goes away. There's a little leakage. There's the 8-foot drawbar. And down here, the sub-octave, 16 feet, gives me a lower note. Here it comes. Well, that beefs up the sound a lot, and it's a pretty conventional effect. In the middle, can you see it? It says 5 1/3. That's actually a fascinating overtone. It's going to be above this 8-foot octave. It's going to be the 5th. Do you hear it coming in? That's an A. It is actually an A being played along with a low D, a high D, and then an even higher A. It's kind of like a power chord for guitarists, isn't it? Well, 8 divided by 2 is 4. And guess what? This is another octave. You can hear it, can't you? 2 2/3, you guessed it, another 5th. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Another octave. I'm going to make it quieter. 1 3/5. What is that? Can you hear that it's the major third? I'm sitting here playing a D, and I'm playing a root 5th and a major third very, very high up there. If I change the note to C, I'll be playing a C major chord. It's hard to hear those upper harmonics. You may have a difficulty hearing them. I'm going to get rid of the lowest octaves. And that squeechy, squelchy sound is the classic sort of sound of the upper partials of really pretty much every instrument, but we've translated it here to the organ. Well, the B3, as it's commonly sort of played, takes advantage of a bunch of other elements as well. I initialize this preset. Most B3 players will go through a rotary cabinet. I'm going to turn that rotary cabinet mic system on, and when I play a single note, we'll now hear the sound spatially. I just sped the spinning speaker up. It's being picked up by these two microphones and a bass one. There's a bass rotor and a spinning horn. And that's what makes the Leslie speaker so awesome to sound, to play. When you're sitting in front of a Leslie speaker, the sound is encompassing. It's swelling all around you. It's a single point source, right? It's a single cabinet. But the rotating speaker makes the sound scatter everywhere. It's an awesome sound. Well, I usually don't use the fast setting. I'm usually back here. Now, you might be able to hear other elements too. There's a little click. Do you hear it? It's called percussion. There's ordinarily just a little key click, just depending on your model. But listen to what happens when I turn percussion on. An even louder click. And it does away with the highest drawbar if you use it. And then there's a soft volume for it. This is where I usually live with my percussion. I have a fast percussion, and I use the third harmonic. You hear it? It's tick, tick, tick. Current great B3 players, live B3 players, include the Australian Lackey Dooley. Oh my God, what a player. Also whammy clav, really? It's a thing, apparently. Well, let's hop on back to the to some of the options here, and you can see you can control in the vintage B3 a bunch of details, and you know what? You might want to deep dive into that. So out of the options, you've got various effects, including wah and distortion, equalizer, and then if you want to get into details, because every B3 is different, they stopped making them in like the 60s or something. Don't quote me on that. We'd have to look it up. The drawbar leak and how various kinds of things sound, all part of the B3 sound. A writing partner of mine submitted something to their client, and instead of using a vocal, because it was for background music, the lead line was on kind of a rock organ sound. And she's like, no, stop. It sounds like you're at a skating rink. Well, I've heard that a bunch too in my production work. But nothing beats playing a B3 live. It's thrilling for jazz and rock. It can be used discreetly as a pad instrument behind lots of different kinds of popular music right now. And I don't know a single keyboard player who doesn't really appreciate being with a good B3. It's like a giant furry beast. So I'm going to remind you, Martin Heidenreich and I have a holiday challenge coming up. We'll be dropping the announcement of that early next week. Keep your ears open for that one. Like and subscribe to the channel. We're doing a lot of stuff. I'm posting every day this week just to see what it feels like. It feels great. We're over 800 subscribers, and I'm just really grateful. I hope this has been useful, and I'll see you next time.